Yo, what's up guys? Welcome back to another video on the Gooners and Gloves Podcast channel. In today's video, I'm going to be giving you guys my thoughts and reactions to Viktor Gyökeres officially joining Arsenal. It's done, it's official. Arsenal have announced Viktor Gyökeres. He's in an Arsenal shirt and I'm just really happy that the striker saga and the Viktor Gyökeres saga is finally over. We can officially say that Arsenal have signed a striker and I'm really happy, as is the entire fan base. It's brilliant to finally have a striker through the door. So as always, I'm just going to give you guys my thoughts and reactions to the transfer, talking about both what he brings to Arsenal as a player and also the financials behind the deal. Obviously this is a massive signing, one of the biggest of the window, definitely Arsenal's biggest signing of the window so far, and of course one of the biggest of the window in general. Obviously Viktor Gyökeres is a bagsman, he's the most informed striker in the world, so his transfer saga was always going to be a massive one, but Arsenal have won the race. He only wanted Arsenal, and that's definitely something that I'm going to get into in a second, but pretty much as always, I'm just going to give you guys my thoughts and reactions to the transfer. So pretty much let's get straight into it. So of course the first thing we have to talk about is the elephant in the room, and that's the fact that he really wanted to play for Arsenal. That's something that's always fantastic. It's something that I always want in my players, is obviously, do they want to play for Arsenal? And there's absolutely no question Viktor Gyökeres wanted to play for Arsenal. No questions asked about that. The amount that this man did to get to Arsenal is absolutely incredible. Seriously, the amount of things that he did to make this move happen. His agent gave up 10% of his fee. He himself gave up 2 million euros of his own salary. He rejected Manchester United. He rejected Juventus. He rejected Saudi clubs. He went on strike against Sporting. He refused to show up for training. He literally did so much to make this move happen. So already that's something that, in my opinion, is going to make him absolutely adored by Arsenal fans, including me, of course, is just his sheer commitment to joining Arsenal. He made it clear from the beginning he only wanted Arsenal. He didn't want anyone else, and he did everything in his power to make the move happen, and that's why I'm so happy that he's got his dream move. He will be an Arsenal player, and it's just really exciting. Sorry, he already is an Arsenal player. Arsenal have made it official, so obviously that's absolutely fantastic. So that's something I had to mention. It's just his sheer commitment to joining the club. There's no question about it. He wants to play and fight for the badge, and that's exactly what we want at Arsenal. So that's something that, in my opinion, is really going to translate on the pitch. He wants to play for Arsenal. He's made that clear. He's going to fight for the badge, and ultimately that's what you want in your players. So that's obviously the first key positive about the deal, is the fact that he really wanted Arsenal. He made it clear from the beginning he wants Arsenal and no one else, and he did absolutely everything in his power, not to mention his agent as well, foregoing, I think it's 10% of his fee, or foregoing money that he was otherwise entitled to for the sake of helping his client make the move happen. So massive shout out to Gyökeres' agent as well for doing that for him, because ultimately it's not something that he had to do, but he protected the interests of his client Gyökeres first, and for that, nothing but respect. So that's the first key thing to mention. The first key reason I'm so happy about the deal going through is obviously his insane commitment to playing for Arsenal. End of the day, that's who you want at your club. You want players who want to play for your club, and Viktor Gyökeres made that very clear with the amount of stuff that he did. He is already adored by Arsenal fans, including myself, and it's a very clear reason. When you show this much commitment to joining Arsenal and you want to play for the badge this badly, absolutely, the fans are going to replicate that passion back, and it's really good to see that the fans are getting behind him and really making their excitement for Viktor Gyökeres known, because end of the day, he deserves it. He showed us so much love, he showed us so much commitment to joining the club, so we have to pay that commitment back now. So that's the first key thing to mention, is of course he really wanted to move, he really wanted to join Arsenal, and that's something that I'll always be behind. Right, getting into him as a player, first of all, obviously he's the most informed striker in the world. He scored 97 goals in 102 games for Sporting Lisbon. I think he scored 54 goals and got 13 assists last season, which is just absolutely incredible. 39 goals in I think 32 games in Liga Portugal. Say what you want about the Portuguese league, you may argue that it's only the Portuguese league, but listen, these are still generational numbers, okay? These are still numbers that are absolutely frightening, they're absolutely unheard of, and he still deserves massive respect. So that's obviously something that's absolutely amazing about the transfer, is the fact that he's got so many goals, and ultimately that's what Arsenal has needed. That's what Arsenal has needed the last couple of seasons. Obviously we had a lot of games last season, including, for example, the PSG semi-final, where we dominated on XG but just could not put those chances away. I can absolutely guarantee you that this man right here, Viktor Gyökeres, will put those chances away. He's a bagsman, he's a goal scorer, he's a goal scorer by every single definition. He's got so many goals. That's something that we really have to talk about. 97 goals in 102 games for Sporting Lisbon. Obviously loads of assists as well. I think last season he got 13 or something, which for a striker is quite a lot. So it's brilliant, it's really good, and it's exactly what you want. And not only in Liga Portugal, not only in Portugal, he did it in the Champions League, 6 goals in 8 games. He's done it for Sweden, he's got quite a few goals over there. I think he's also the starter for Sweden, and I think Isak typically is on the bench, and I think it's actually Viktor Gyökeres who starts, so that's something to mention. So Sweden, Europa League, Champions League, Liga Portugal, he's done it everywhere he's been. Obviously, he smashed it at Coventry, and let's be clear, the Championship is a really hard league to do well in, so the fact that he was able to do well at Coventry is definitely very promising as well, because the Championship is actually a very, very difficult league to do well in. So that's obviously the next positive about this signing. It's, you know, very self-explanatory. Arsenal have needed a bagsman ever since we got rid of Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang, and that's exactly what we've got now. Nothing against Jesus and Havertz, they're still solid, they still score goals, but they're not true, like, they're not clinical, if you get what I mean. They're not like just out and out, just, you know, like rugged, just absolutely determined striker who scores goal after goal after goal. But Viktor Gyökeres is absolutely that. So it feels really, really good to have someone who's truly just, you know, rugged, got that dog in them, and just completely fights for every ball and fights for every goal. And that's exactly what we've got in Viktor Gyökeres. So obviously that's the next positive about this signing is, I mean, of course, goals. You know, 97 goals in 102 games, 6 goals and 8 in the Champions League, loads of goals for Portugal. Sorry, not Portugal. What's called Sweden. So yeah, definitely really, really happy about that. We've needed a bagsman, and that's exactly what we've got ourselves in Viktor Gyökeres. Loads of goals, and in my opinion, you know, some may argue that it won't translate to the Premier League. I honestly don't agree. Yes, he won't keep up those sorts of numbers. You know, clearly he's not going to get 97 goals in his first 102 games for Arsenal. However, I have no doubt that he's still going to have a high output, because let's not forget, Arsenal creates a lot of XG. Arsenal creates loads of chances. You know, I feel like that's a common misconception with Arsenal. People just think they're not very creative, but I can tell you guys, we are a very creative team. You know, we've got Bukayo Saka, Gabriel Martinelli, Martin Odegaard, Ethan Nwaneri, etc. We've got loads of great creative players, Declan Rice as well, of course, and they create loads of chances. You know, they do, and Kai Havertz and Gabriel Jesus are definitely decent, and they definitely take some of those chances, but there's no denying that they do also miss a lot of them as well. And to be fair, so does Martinelli. Even Saka sometimes misses chances. However, Viktor Gyökeres is someone who, you know, takes his chances, does really well with his XG, and in my opinion, having Martin Odegaard, Gabriel Martinelli, Bukayo Saka, potentially Eberechi Eze, all feeding him balls and, you know, creating chances for him, I just cannot see how he doesn't get a bunch of goals and do well. So I've got no doubt that he'll get loads of goals for Arsenal, and in my opinion, that's exactly what we need. End of the day, we've needed a bagsman, and what better than to get the most informed striker in the world. So that's the next positive about the signing, is obviously the fact that this is, statistically speaking, the most informed striker in the world. He would have won the European Golden Boot had it not been for the rule where if your goals are in outside of the top 5 leagues, they only get multiplied by 1, whereas if you do it in the top 5 leagues, it gets multiplied by 1.5. That's the reason why Kylian Mbappe won the Golden Boot. Otherwise, it would have been Viktor Gyökeres's. So yeah, that's the next positive point. Obviously, you know, he scores loads of goals. I mean, it's as simple as it gets. Arsenal have needed a goal scorer and a striker, so what better than getting the most informed striker in the world? So that's something else. The next thing that we need to talk about Gyökeres and why it's such a good signing is he's a fantastic transitional threat. Viktor Gyökeres is an absolute machine on the counter. This guy just knows how to grab the ball from one end and just absolutely storm up the pitch on the other end. He's a really, really good ball carrier and a very, very physical guy. You know, he's massive, he's ripped, and ultimately, in my opinion, we're going to be able to use that, you know, use that bulkiness. And in my opinion, he's going to be able to use that bulkiness to get past Premier League defenders, run up the pitch, and ultimately get from one end to the other. And he's someone who's so good on the transition. We've seen it time and time again for Sporting and Sweden, etc. When he gets the ball on one end, in a flash, he's on the other end and he's bagging in a goal. Like, he's so good on the transition, and Arsenal, obviously, have always been good on the transition, and Arsenal have always liked playing on the transition, and obviously having Viktor Gyökeres there to take the ball, bully his way through Premier League defenders is just going to be absolutely fantastic and is really going to help Arsenal out. So that's definitely another key thing to talk about Gyökeres when mentioning why he's a good signing for Arsenal, is his transitional threat. He's really, really scary on the counter. You know, he, absolutely bombs up and down the pitch and is so good on the counter, on transition. And Arsenal have always, been decent on transition, but not quite at like the absolute elite level. Well, with Viktor Gyökeres there, you could definitely see Arsenal becoming elite on the transition, on the counter, and honestly being really scary. And especially when you remember that you got really fast players like Bukayo Saka, Gabriel Martinelli, Ethan Nwaneri, and so on, and then you've got Viktor Gyökeres right there, ready for them to feed balls into. It's just going to spell a recipe for disaster for other Premier League defenses. So that's another key thing to mention with Viktor Gyökeres, is how good he is on transition. He knows how to make things happen. He knows how to get the ball from one end of the pitch to the other. So that's another great thing about Viktor Gyökeres. One thing that I will admit is definitely, will need to be coached is his heading. We know that heading wise, he's never particularly been great. Not quite as bad as what people think, but not amazing either. However, However, I'm not too concerned about this because ultimately that can be coached. You know what I mean? Like that's very coachable. You know, heading, winning aerial duels, etc. That is all very coachable. We obviously have a fantastic set piece coach, and of course we have Mikel Arteta himself. So honestly, I'm not, and of course Gabriel Heinze, who just joined as well. So I'm not too concerned about like his heading and his aerial duels, simply because that is coachable. I do agree that it's probably not quite at the level that it should be. However, it's very coachable. It's very, very, you know, like he can be nurtured into that. Absolutely, I've got no doubt that that can all be coached into him. So it's definitely something worth mentioning for people that maybe are kind of not happy about the signing. They're saying about his heading and his goal scoring, but also even if it wasn't coachable, let's not forget we've got plenty of we've got plenty of players who can score headers. We have absolutely tons. We've got Kai Havertz, we've got Declan Rice, we've got Mikel Merino, we've got now we've got Martin Zubimendi, who's really good on set pieces as well. So we've got loads of different players, not to mention our defenders, Gabriel, Saliba, Ben White, Yuri Timber, Calafiori, so on. So we've got loads of different targets that can get headers. So it's not something to be too concerned about, but it's something that I thought I would mention just because it's something that people have been bringing up as a bit more of a negative, is the fact that, you know, he isn't necessarily great on, you know, headers and also aerial duels, which is fair enough. However, as I mentioned before, he does still score them and it is coachable. So yeah, that's the next point to mention about Gyökeres. He may not have the best heading or aerial duels. However, that is coachable and he still does score them. So as long as he's nurtured into it, I do think he can become a real big threat on headers and set pieces, because let's not forget he's still big. He's like over 6 foot, massive, very big, bulky and strong. So, you know, he could definitely make use of those attributes and to become a very lethal header of the ball. So that's the next thing to mention. Another thing that's very positive about the Viktor Gyökeres signing is that he's fantastic at penalties. We know that he has a very, very high accuracy rate with penalties, and some people use that as a criticism. For me, that's not a criticism at all. That's fantastic. I absolutely love that. End of the day, I want someone who 99.9% of the time when they take a penalty, you're confident that they'll score it. Absolutely. Like, I definitely welcome and embrace that. You know, don't get me wrong, Bukayo Saka's been fantastic at penalties. However, as we know with Arsenal, even last season, they weren't necessarily consistent with the penalties. Bukayo Saka stepped up at the Bernabeu and missed. Martin Odegaard stepped up against Manchester United and missed. You know, that Man United miss cost us the FA Cup. In Saka's case, it didn't cost us anything. However, it definitely gave Real Madrid a bit of confidence. So having someone like Gyökeres, and obviously I don't know if he'll definitely take over penalty duties from Saka. That remains to be seen. However, having someone like Gyökeres, who you know will pretty much always score his penalties, is really good for confidence in the penalty shootouts and in general penalties in matches. It's just really, really nice to have someone like Gyökeres, who you know will score the penalties. You know he pretty much will never miss, and that's just great. You know, that's exactly what we want. That's exactly what we need. Is someone who, you know, is clinical on the penalty spot, and that's exactly what Viktor Gyökeres is. So that's definitely, in my opinion anyway, a positive. I know some people are going to say it's a negative because he has a lot of penalty goals, but I don't see it that way. End of the day, I want someone who is pretty much always going to bag their penalties, and we've certainly got that in Viktor Gyökeres, who absolutely loves taking penalties and is very, very good at them. So that's another key thing to mention, is obviously he's really good at penalties, and ultimately that's important, in my opinion anyway. That's important. You want someone who's a bagsman and who can always score his penalties, and that's what Viktor Gyökeres does. So yeah, pretty much those are some of the key points. He's fantastic on transition. He's an absolute bagsman. He scores loads of goals. He's very physical, obviously massive and dominant, and ultimately he's just someone who, in my opinion, is going to bring Arsenal to a whole new level. So yeah, those are the most important points. Of course, something I haven't even mentioned yet, and let's get into now, is financially, I think it's a solid deal. I think Arteta and Berta, you know, as much as the negotiations with Sporting were extremely drawn out and really long, to be fair, they did have what I would say is quite a good outcome. All in all, it's 63.5 million euros up front, which is around 55 million pounds, and then it's about 10 million euros in add-ons, which is around 8.5 million pounds. So all in all, up front, it's 55 million pounds, and in total it could reach around sort of 63.5, 64 million pounds. So all in all, in my opinion, that's not a bad deal at all. I think we smashed it with that. Honestly, that's a really solid deal. I'm happy with it. Remember, this is the most clinical goal scorer in all of Europe and you know, pretty much the world. So to be able to get him for only a maximum of 64 million pounds and an upfront fee of 55 million pounds, in my opinion, that's a really good deal. So fair play again to Andrea Berta and to Mikel Arteta for making that happen. That's a very solid deal, especially when you consider that Benjamin Šeško would have cost in excess of 90 million euros, which, you know, is a good like 80 million pounds. It's just far too much. But Viktor Gyökeres, we're getting an upfront fee of 55 million pounds with a potential maximum potential add-ons of around 8.5 million pounds. So really good deal from that perspective. That's another reason I'm happy. Basically, to summarize this video, I'm just extremely happy. I'm I'm over the moon. I'm so pleased that we've got Viktor Gyökeres. I know I said in previous videos that I would love if we can sign them both, and don't get me wrong, that would be awesome if we can sign both Viktor Gyökeres and Benjamin Šeško. However, individually out of the two of them, my preference has always been Viktor Gyökeres. Absolutely, out of the two of them, I've always preferred Viktor Gyökeres. So the fact that it's actually happened, is just amazing. It's music to my ears, and I'm so happy. I'm a massive fan of Viktor Gyökeres. I think he's got so much potential and will smash it at Arsenal. And as I said before, because obviously of his because of all the stuff that he did to join Arsenal, his commitment to joining Arsenal, he just deserves all the praise and all the respect. As far as I'm concerned, he did everything in his power to join Arsenal, and now here he is. He's an Arsenal player, and I'm so excited to see him. So to summarize my thoughts, I'm over the moon with the transfer. I've wanted Gyökeres. I definitely, really wanted him to sign, and that's exactly what's happened for a decent fee. An absolute bagsman, a fantastic player, Viktor Gyökeres, or as I personally like to call him, I forgot to mention this, but what I personally like to call him is Viktor Gyökeres. Obviously, he's very elite, so that's what I like to call him as a bit of fun, Viktor Gyökeres, and hopefully he lives up to that nickname. It's just a fun little nickname. I'm sure some of you guys have probably called him that as well, but personally, I like to call him Viktor Gyökeres because he's an absolute bagsman and he scores tons of goals. So yeah, pretty much that's going to go on and do it for this video. Thank you guys so much for listening. I really appreciate it. It's been amazing talking about this transfer. It's so good to see stuff happening at Arsenal and to see yet another signing come in. Of course, the biggest one of the summer by a mile. It was a really drawn out, really long process with Sporting Lisbon. That was not very fun. However, in the end, we've reached the finish line. He is an Arsenal player and I'm really happy. I'm hoping that we get to see him in pre-season. I mean, I'm pretty sure that is the plan. It's been made quite clear that Arteta wants him for pre-season, and it's probably going to get a lot of minutes. So hopefully we see him in the Singapore games, in the Emirates Cup, and in the other games. So yeah, pretty much that's going to go on and do it for this video. So all in all, I'm absolutely over the moon with the signing due to various reasons. He's an absolute bagsman. He scores tons of goals. He fits really well into the system, in my opinion. His heading and stuff, that can be coached. He's physical. He's obviously huge, very big, very strong, can really work, can really bulldoze his way through defenders. The deal was really good from a financial standpoint. And ultimately, the guy just really wanted to join Arsenal, really wanted to be here, which ultimately I'll always, have an admiration for. So all in all, I'm absolutely buzzing. Welcome to the Arsenal Viktor Gyökeres. I'm really excited to have him. I hope that he absolutely smashes it for Arsenal. And, can he win the Golden Boot? Let's hope. We can only dream, but hopefully he does. I think he has definitely the potential to. So, yeah, but anyway, thank you guys so much for listening. I really appreciate all of the support recently that you've been giving me. Thank you guys so much. Please let me know down below what you think of the Viktor Gyökeres saga and transfer down below. What do you think of the signing of Viktor Gyökeres? Are you happy? Did you prefer Šeško? Are you someone who thinks that we should have gone for Isak? Please let me know. But in terms of me personally, I'm delighted. I'm over the moon, and I'm so happy to see Viktor Gyökeres over the line. I've wanted the signing all summer, and it's finally happened. So all in all, I'm going to go ahead and end this podcast here. I've gone on for quite a long time, but all in all, I'm absolutely over the moon. Welcome to the Arsenal Viktor Gyökeres, and I'll catch you guys at another podcast soon. Bye bye.